"This isn't a video game, sweetheart." The sergeant sneered as she stepped up to the sniper platform. The rest of the range crew chuckled, watching her adjust the scope like she knew what she was doing. She said nothing. Just one breath, one trigger pull. The shot echoed over the ridge. When the dust cleared, a gong rang. A general removed his hat and saluted. "Permission to salute, ma'am." Her name was Leah Cole, 28 years old, the only daughter of Marine Corps legend Gunnery Sergeant Ethan Cole, a man they called Ghost Wind during the mountain campaigns of Afghanistan. But Leah had never officially stepped foot in the military because her father died before she came of age. She grew up on private training grounds, handling a Remington 700 since she was 10 years old. Despite shooting better than most soldiers, she chose to work as a weapons technical advisor for the Pentagon. Nobody on the sniper team knew that. When she was assigned field duty with a new Marine unit, all they saw was some brown-haired girl with sunglasses, no military rank. On her first day at the shooting range, a sergeant asked, "You sure about this? This isn't some arcade shooting gallery." Everyone laughed. Leah just nodded quietly. They handed her a Barrett M82A1. She inspected it, made adjustments. The target, a steel plate 1.2 miles away. Nobody in the unit had ever hit it. The Marines whispered among themselves, "Wonder if Daddy taught her how to hold a gun." "Probably thinks Call of Duty counts as training." "This should be entertaining." Leah positioned herself behind the rifle. Her movements were fluid, precise, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. The sergeant crossed his arms, smirking. "Take your time, sweetheart. Wind's picking up, so maybe wait for—" She was already in position. The other Marines gathered around, some holding their phones to record what they expected to be an embarrassing miss. $20 says she doesn't even hit the mountain," one whispered. "I'll take that bet," another replied, "but only because I think she might accidentally hit a tree." Rivers, the youngest Marine in the group, felt uncomfortable with the mockery, but he stayed quiet, not wanting to be the next target of their jokes. Leah adjusted her breathing. In her mind, she could hear her father's voice. "The rifle doesn't care about your feelings, sweetheart, only your discipline." She'd spent years perfecting this exact shot, thousands of rounds, countless hours studying wind patterns, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure. But to these Marines, she was just another civilian trying to play soldier. The range fell quiet as she settled into her shooting stance. Nobody knew they were about to witness something that would change everything. Leah fired, one steady breath. Hold for wind. Squeeze the trigger. A clean crack rang out. Then, clang! Everything went silent. Nobody said a word. Someone muttered, "Probably hit a rock." They checked with the surveillance drone. The bullet had gone straight through the center. Perfect bullseye. The sergeant's jaw dropped. The Marines stared at the drone footage in disbelief. That's impossible," one of them stammered. "Must be equipment malfunction," another insisted. But deep down, they knew what they'd witnessed was real. After the shooting session, Leah found herself isolated. Nobody sat with her during meals. She overheard the conversations. "Total fluke shot. Someone's daddy taught her a few tricks. Doesn't mean she's military material. Bet she can't do it twice." A young Marine named Rivers tried to defend her, but the sergeant shut him down. "Don't go falling for the sniper Barbie act." Leah remained silent through it all. That night, she went to the practice facility alone, shooting continuously in nighttime wind conditions. Rivers secretly followed her. He was stunned to see her put 5 rounds through the same hole at 900 meters, in complete darkness. No night vision, no assistance, just pure skill. He watched her methodical approach, the way she read wind patterns by observing grass movement, how she calculated atmospheric pressure by feeling humidity on her skin. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. The next morning, Rivers filed a report to command headquarters. What nobody knew was that a regional commander had already taken notice of Leah's performance, but the isolation continued. During training exercises, she was consistently excluded from team activities. "We need real shooters for this mission," the sergeant announced during briefing. "Cole, you can observe from the sidelines." The other Marines snickered. Leah nodded without protest. During a combat simulation, the designated marksman struggled with long-range targets. Wind conditions kept changing, throwing off their calculations. Mission after mission failed. Leah watched from the observation deck, silently calculating the corrections they needed to make. Just 2 clicks left for crosswind, she whispered to herself. Compensate for the thermal draft coming off those rocks. The humidity dropped 15% in the last hour, but nobody asked for her input. One afternoon during weapons maintenance, a corporal approached her. Look, I don't know what kind of connections got you this assignment, he said coldly, but this is serious business. People's lives depend on precision. This isn't a place for amateurs. Leah looked up from cleaning her rifle. You're right, she said quietly. Lives do depend on precision. The corporal mistook her agreement for submission. Good. Maybe you'll request a transfer to something more suitable. That evening, Rivers approached Leah during dinner. I saw what you did last night, he said quietly. That shooting, it wasn't normal. Leah continued eating. What do you mean? 5 shots, same hole, 900 meters, complete darkness. I've seen our best snipers struggle with half that distance in daylight. She looked at him carefully. Sometimes the best way to learn is to watch quietly. Who trained you? For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Pain, maybe, or pride. Someone who believed that actions speak louder than words. The next day would change everything. Nobody knew that a full-scale tactical exercise was being planned, one that would test every sniper in the unit. And nobody knew that a certain general was coming to observe. A large-scale tactical exercise was underway at the base. A simulated hostage rescue with sniper support. Leah was ordered to stand aside and observe. When the primary shooting team failed repeatedly due to shifting winds, Command Center began to panic. The simulated hostage situation was reaching critical failure point. Leah watched from the sidelines, reading the wind flags, calculating the thermal currents perfectly. She stepped forward and requested permission to shoot. Denied. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the radio. Let Cole take 1 shot. Everyone froze. She climbed into position, adjusting the X&M 2010 rifle. Complete silence. Wind howling through the ridge. 1 breath. Bang. The hostage remained standing. The enemy target dropped. Command went silent. Then slow clapping echoed from behind them. From an armored vehicle in the rear, an elderly general stepped out. Who is Cole? Leah stood up. He removed his hat and approached. I served with your father. He taught me how to survive 14 days on a frozen peak. Then he stood at attention and saluted her. Permission to salute, ma'am. But let me back up and tell you exactly what happened in those crucial moments. The exercise had been running for 3 hours. Multiple sniper teams had attempted the shot. Each one failed. Wind conditions were brutal. Crosswinds at 15 knots, with thermal updrafts creating unpredictable bullet drift. The target scenario, a hostage taker holding a civilian at knife point, positioned behind cover with only a 3-inch window for a clean shot. Distance, 850 meters. Margin for error, 0. The first team's shot went wide left. The second team overcorrected and went right. The third team's bullet hit the cover, potentially killing the hostage in the simulation. Command was growing frustrated. This was supposed to be a demonstration of Marine Corps precision for visiting military officials. Instead, it was becoming an embarrassment. Colonel Martinez, the range commander, was sweating. This is exactly the kind of shot our boys should be nailing consistently. From the observation deck, Leah watched the wind flags. She noticed something the other shooters had missed. Every 45 seconds, there was a brief lull in the crosswind. A 2-second window where the thermal currents aligned perfectly. She'd been timing it for 20 minutes. Sir, she called out to Colonel Martinez, permission to attempt the shot. The colonel barely looked at her. Negative. This is for qualified personnel only. But unknown to everyone, General Harrison had been monitoring radio communications from his vehicle. He'd received Rivers' report about Leah's nighttime shooting performance. More importantly, he'd received a classified briefing about Leah's background. When he heard her request over the radio, he keyed his mic. Let Cole take 1 shot. The entire range went quiet. Colonel Martinez looked confused. Sir, that order came from General Harrison. Let her shoot. Leah walked to the firing position. The other Marines stepped aside, some whispering among themselves. She examined the XM 2010, checking the scope calibration, made 3 minor adjustments, positioned herself behind the rifle with fluid precision. The wind was picking up again. Perfect. She began timing the thermal cycle. 30 seconds. 40 seconds. "Any time now, Cole," the sergeant muttered impatiently. 43 seconds. She inhaled slowly, exhaled halfway, held. 45 seconds. The wind flags went still for exactly 2 seconds. Her finger moved smoothly on the trigger. Crack. The sound echoed across the valley. Through the spotting scope, everyone could see the result immediately. The hostage target remained untouched. The enemy target had a perfect center mass hit. Complete silence for 10 seconds. Then from behind them, the sound of slow, deliberate clapping. General Harrison stepped out of his vehicle. A man in his 70s with silver hair and weathered hands that had seen 40 years of military service. "Outstanding shot," he called out as he approached. Colonel Martinez snapped to attention. "General Harrison." "Sir." But the general's attention was focused entirely on Leah. "You must be Cole," he said, studying her face. "You have your father's eyes." Leah's composure cracked slightly. "You knew my father, sir. Ethan Cole saved my life in Kandahar province. Best sniper instructor I ever served with." The general removed his hat and stood at attention. "Permission to salute, ma'am. Your father would be proud." From that day forward, Leah was invited to become a special instructor for advanced long-range shooting classes. The soldiers who once mocked her now called her Coach Cole. Rivers came to apologize, but Leah just smiled. "Next time, trust your eyes." The military newspaper published an article, "The Most Accurate Long-Range Shooter at Camp Timberlake." A photo went viral, Leah standing beside a target with words her father had once carved. "Real snipers don't speak. The bullet does." But the real change wasn't in the headlines or recognition. It was in the training ground. Every morning, young Marines lined up to learn from her. She taught them the lessons her father had taught her. Breathing isn't just about oxygen, she'd tell them. It's about timing, about patience, about knowing when to hold your fire and when to take the shot. Wind isn't your enemy, it's information. Learn to read it like a language. The rifle is just a tool. Your mind is the weapon. She established a training program that would later be adopted across multiple military bases. Her techniques increased accuracy rates by 40% among new recruits. But perhaps most importantly, she changed the culture. Respect isn't given because of rank or gender, she told her classes. It's earned through competence and character. Sergeant Morrison, who had initially mocked her, became one of her most dedicated students. "Ma'am," he said after a particularly challenging lesson, "I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you thanks. You made me a better Marine." Colonel Martinez recommended her for a civilian commendation for excellence in military training. General Harrison visited the base monthly to observe her classes. "Your father trained Marines who saved countless lives," he told her during one visit. "You're training the next generation to do the same." The photo of her standing beside the target became iconic. It was printed and hung in the National Marksman Memorial Hall. Underneath, they added a plaque with her father's words and her own addition, "Taught by Ghost Wind, proven in silence." 6 months later, Leah received an offer to head the Marine Corps Advanced Marksmanship Program. She accepted, not for the recognition, not for the rank, but because every Marine she trained carried forward her father's legacy of precision, discipline, and quiet excellence. The girl who was once dismissed as Sniper Barbie had become the standard by which all others were measured, and she did it exactly the way her father taught her, without saying a word until her actions spoke louder than anything else could. Some people don't need to shout to be heard. They stay quiet, then let their actions echo louder than any words ever could. Leah didn't join the military for fame. She stepped up because of the legacy her father left behind, and one shot transformed silence into honor before the entire unit. If you believe that true humility and real skill will always triumph over prejudice, share this story, because out there are still many Leah Coles staying quiet, preparing for their defining moment. Sometimes the most powerful statement is the one that doesn't need words, just perfect aim.